Hi, I'm Matt Shepard.
And I'm Chad Shepard.
Coming up on this edition of Shep, Shower, and Shave, we discuss some NFL offseason news, including Matt Stafford's contract.
Plus, maybe we're lucky in Detroit. Washington's front office execs can't even pronounce their franchise quarterback's name right.
And what do you think about the olive branch extended from the Lions to Calvin Johnson? All that and more coming up on this edition of Shep, Shower, and Shave, brought to you by Fifth Avenue, always a premier destination in Royal Oak with over 36 cold beers on tap. They've got great food. They've got great drink specials. Their kitchen is open until 2 a.m. on a daily basis. There is no better place in Detroit to feel the excitement when you watch the Tigers, Wings, Lions, Pistons, Wolverines, and Spartans. We're also brought to you by Northwestern Tech. Heating and cooling employers are desperate for trained technicians. Make money, and you do it by going to Northwestern Tech. HVAC is all they teach. They've perfected their hands-on program for over 38 years. You can get trained, certified, and into the field in only 10 and a half months by going to northwesterntech.edu or by calling them at 248-358-4006. And we're also brought to you by Nate Noth Design. See his work on Instagram or Facebook. If you like our logo, imagine what he could do for you and your business. Right? No question. My belief is that the quarterback position is one of the most important positions in all of sports, not just football, but in all of sports. We know Derek Carr got his money from the Oakland Raiders. Matt Stafford is going to get his money from the Detroit Lions. It's just a matter of time. Do you think, Chad, they're waiting for what's going to happen with Kirk Cousins? And I say Kirk Cousins, the former Spartan quarterback, the guy who's done a really nice job in Washington, and a guy who has been franchised already a couple of times. But at least, the Lions know how to pronounce their quarterback's name. We'll get to that here more in a moment. But look, they had some talks. Washington did in early May that would have given Cousins a record $53 million in fully guaranteed at the time of his signing, and according to ESPN, $72 million in guarantees for injury as well. All right. Now, they did not make, according to most reports, another offer after Derek Carr signed his extension in mid-June. Cousins' franchise tag for 2017, I can't even believe we're saying this, is going to be $24 million. And that means that Washington's deal would be worth about $29 million in new money. Are the Lions dragging their feet to sign Matt Stafford, or should the Lions wait for Kirk Cousins, or should Stafford, maybe it's Stafford who's waiting for Kirk Cousins to sign some type of deal in case he gets traded, let's say, to San Francisco?
I could be wrong on this, but my perception is that it's Cousins who would have benefited from Stafford signing before him than the other way around. We don't know the full dynamics of Kirk Cousins taking that tag. He seems like a very approachable human being. He seems like one of the nice guys in sports. Again, I don't know him as a human being. Perhaps he, as much as he expresses that he doesn't really care, he's got an intense displeasure with the dysfunction of the organization in Washington. I imagine he's a competitor and he wants to win, and he has no designs on really staying there in a long-term extension.
Yeah, I would be too.
From that perspective, maybe that's part of why he's continued to take. I guess take implies accepting, but he's been having the tag kind of slapped on him. So I thought it would be him that would benefit from Stafford, because Stafford would have a big number, and then his average which is how the cap works, the top three or the top five at your position, that average salary.
Point.
So I think Cousins would have benefited more from Stafford signing than the other way around. If anything, the big number that Derek Carr puts up has to help Stafford, because this is what's unique, and we talked about this a little bit with the Connor McDavid signing when we discussed that in a recent episode. Derek Carr has not done anything yet, and he's gotten that money. That's what's different about some of these contracts, is that you're signing for what you know a guy can do, as opposed to in the past where you've signed for what a guy has done. And we've seen examples of that go the wrong way, where Kobe Bryant gets a ridiculous contract at the end of his career, and you're paying him for what he used to be able to do instead of what he can do for you in the future. But I do believe that Matt Stafford is going to get this extension done with the Lions. I think it just makes too much sense for both organizations, and I mean, the Lions definitely need him.
What do you mean?
But I think setting the bar is.
Let me clarify something. You said Derek Carr hasn't done anything. What do you mean he hasn't done anything? He's made a Pro Bowl, went 12-3 last year, threw for almost 4,000 yards. What do you mean he hasn't done anything? You're talking about winning in terms of. I mean, he had 28 touchdowns last year. He had 32 the year before, and he was hurt last year.
I know, but I think I'm talking about when guys get enormous numbers like that, it's usually not when they're 2-3 years out of school without. I mean, does he have he might have one playoff win? Does he have any playoff wins?
No.
So
he does not.
I guess when I said he's done nothing, all I meant was that he's equal footing or lower than Matthew Stafford in terms of career accomplishments. Okay. And normally you don't shell out money for a guy like that who hasn't proven that he can win playoff games for you. Okay. And that's all I meant by that. But as far as the Stafford extension, he's going to be the highest paid player in the league, and he probably deserves to be the highest paid player for this cycle. It's going to get dwarfed soon. Matt Ryan's going to sign a deal in a couple years that'll make it look silly. Aaron Rodgers is going to sign a deal in a couple years that'll make it look silly. Those guys have done more, and they deserve more money like that. Yeah. But there's an interesting comparison that I was going to bring up, and strangely I just read about it in The Athletic in an article, so it's funny that they make the same parallel. Think about the Tigers a few years back with Max Scherzer. They very publicly offered him what I believe was 6 years and $154 million.
Yes.
That's nothing to sneeze at. That would have made him one of the highest paid pitchers in the league. He said, I'm going to bet on myself, which I have endless respect for him for doing.
Right.
He gets 7 years, $210 million from Washington. Yeah. Now, Detroit was a little bitter, and they made some public comments about how they had offered him that deal. And again, we'll talk about Washington a little bit.
Tiger fans were pissed off.
Washington's basically doing the same thing. At some point, you got to tip your hat to the guy. He bet on himself, and he made more than $50 million off that
What's
bet.
wrong with that?
That's a great job by Max Scherzer. Sometimes the pieces just fall apart in different directions. I don't want that to happen with Matt Stafford and the Lions, where they are not willing to make him the highest paid player in the league. He says, fine, I'm going to bet on myself, and I'm going to go to...
But you know why people
who knows where? Minnesota will pay me $26 million a year.
I mean, look,
but that's the comparison with the Derek Carr thing. Take it back the other way. Everyone in Oakland's giddy that they just locked him up. In Detroit, Matthew Stafford has done more, and I know he's had more time. But people are saying they're not willing to commit to him. It's the same level of inaccomplishment.
I know,
you
but
just
if
have more
your best
confidence
friend,
in Oakland.
If your best friend did that, you would say, "Good for you." If your brother did that, or your father did that, you would slap him a high five and say, "Way to go, man! Way to hold out and get as much money as you possibly can." That's what we tell people all the time. You know, this whole loyalty thing has just been one-sided. It's been fans want guys. They were so pissed off when Max Scherzer left. Oh my God, he's greedy. All he does is want the money. How much is enough? You would do the exact same thing. Kirk Cousins could get $100 million guaranteed on the free market. All right, he's got a chance to top Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck's done. I think to a certain extent he might be slightly overrated, to be honest with you. Because everybody acts like he's the next Tom Brady, and he's really not. But Kirk Cousins got a chance to do that. Think about that for a second. If he weren't a local guy, if he weren't from Michigan State, and he weren't from this state in general, would people really be thinking, "Oh, Kirk Cousins is definitely worth it"? Give me a break. Hell no, they wouldn't be thinking that at all. If you don't think that with Derek Carr, and some people are like, "Oh, I'll take Derek Carr over Matt Stafford every day." Okay, fine. You want to take him over that? That's fine. But don't. If the roles were reversed, you didn't win a playoff game. You're throwing for big numbers. You're throwing for a lot of touchdowns. Last year, Carr won 12 games. He got hurt. He won 12 games. But before that, 2 losing records. Would you really take that? Would you want that guy signed? Kirk Cousins is 19, 21-1 in his career, and he's got a chance to make $100 million. He's had 2 winning seasons. How many times has he beaten a team above 500? That's what they always talk about with Matt Stafford. It's not very many teams Kirk Cousins has beaten, but everybody says, "Good job, Washington," or "Good job, Kirk Cousins, way to go." Suddenly it falls back to a guy like Matt Stafford in this town, and people want to hold it against him. It's such hypocrisy. It's unbelievable.
Well, there's an important note you made about Cousins, and the fact that he's been tagged repeatedly is something that I have heard a couple Lions fans talk about. Let's use the tag on Stafford, make him win a playoff game this year, and then see what happens. First of all, you don't hold a player at gunpoint like that. You don't hold him hostage when he's the face of your franchise. This is what Matt Stafford is right now. Let's not make a mistake about it. But if he signed a deal that was around $25 million a year over the next 5 years or something like that, it's comparable to what he would get on the tag. According to these numbers on The Athletic, he'd have a $26.4 million tag in 2017, and if he retains that tag, 2018, excuse me, and if they retain that tag for the next year, it's $31.68 million over 2019. That's kind of my point. At some point, this is going to look like a really affordable deal for Matt Stafford.
Exactly.
Okay, even if he's not the same quarterback in the 5th year of the deal that he is as he starts off the contract, it doesn't matter because there's going to be somebody else who would have paid him something else, and the regression that you take by losing him is literally not worth the $30 million a year it would have been to retain him.
Yeah.
And it's going to be less than that. That's my point. It's actually, you can actually probably make the argument that it's affordable before you can make the argument that overpaid. And I don't use the word overpaid in the sense of what people truly deserve, because we know who really is underpaid in society versus who isn't.
Right.
I'm talking about on the scale of NFL quarterbacks.
No, I'm with you. The thing about it is, it's so damn easy for Lions fans to say, just start over, just get a new guy. I mean, like, they think we don't know what kind of quarterback Sam Darnold's going to be out of USC next year, and he'll be the first one. Would you have
There's
wanted?
some speculation even about that. People think he's got a hitch in his throw and might need to stay another year.
Would you want Mitch Trubisky? Or Trubisky or Pat Mahomes or Deshaun Watson or you don't know what they're going to be, for crying out loud. That you're just rolling the dice because it's not your head on that proverbial chopping block. That's what frustrates the hell out of me when it starts talking about this. Here's a guy who's proven, even though he's never had a running game except for once in his career, he's never really had a good offensive line. And he's had a couple of good defenses. And I know I'm not saying you got to have everything for him, but here's a guy who's a very good player. There's no question he's a very good player. He's as good as, if not better, than the guys that people applaud getting big contracts, but suddenly it's not good enough for them to give it to this guy. He's already proven that, and they want him out of town. To me, it's mind-blowing. It's so frustrating when I deal with that. Now, as far as the Lions are concerned, and you had mentioned this in the tease, it's funny because the Washington Redskins are so dysfunctional. See, here's what's happened in the past with the Lions. They're linked with Russ Thomas, who is cheap. They're linked with Chuck Schmidt, who was a bean counter, not a general manager. They were linked with bad breakups with guys like Jeff Hardings, who went to Pittsburgh, and Matt Millen made a fuss over $100,000. That's it. For a guy who would go on to be a multi-Pro Bowler and a Super Bowl champion. A bad breakup with Herman Moore. A bad breakup with Barry Sanders. A bad breakup now, supposedly, with Calvin Johnson. And they immediately linked the organization as a bad organization. If that's how Lions fans feel about it, so be it. I think Bob Quinn and Rod Wood have done a really good job in terms of that. The Washington Redskins, on a regular basis, when they were talking about Kirk Cousins, kept referring to him by the wrong name. Now, Kirk and Kurt oftentimes sound similar, but it seems like they're kind of out of touch with even their own guys, didn't it? When you heard the audio, I mean,
it's bizarre. I
bizarre.
Genuinely question. I mean, I'm obviously being hyperbolic, but you question everything around you. You question reality in life because you look at it and your head is in your hands. Like, is this guy serious? Is this seriously what's going on? And he's been put in this kind of position. He's done it repeatedly. He's been corrected on air, and later in the conversation, still gone forward and used the word Kurt. It's really incredible, and it almost makes you wonder. You want to give the guy too much credit almost. You're like, oh, is this really some actual stupid tactic where he seems like, oh, I don't even know the guy's name because that's how unimportant he is to our franchise. And it just makes you shake your head. You're trying to come up with some more plausible explanation than the simple one that this guy is as dumb as he is. Kirk Cousins, as I acknowledged earlier, has acted like this is not a big deal. You have to be in some sort of egoless Zen state to really not be offended at all if somebody were to do something like that or pretend like that's not a big deal. I wonder privately what his text messages to his friends and family members look like after something like that. And a lot of credit to him for taking the high road, and we will find out. I'm sure.
That's the kind of person
I'm sure
he is,
a calendar. Well, that's what I mean. I don't know him personally, but that's every impression that I get. I think a calendar year from now, he is signing a big extension with a different organization, and we see some big drawn out Monday morning quarterback or Sports Illustrated piece about how difficult it was for him to keep his lip buttoned during these kinds of situations, and I give him a lot of credit for doing that.
Yeah. And in case people don't know, we're referring to their president, Bruce Allen. He's the one who made the statement, and it sure sounded like. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt, but it sure sounded like he was saying Kurt instead of Kirk. Now, and Chad mentioned, Kirk Cousins laughed it off. It wasn't that big of a deal. He even said, I've been called Kurt my entire life. I remember having different teachers and instructors who would call me Kurt. It doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. But deep down inside, when you're the face of a franchise, when you are their key component to success, and you are relied on to represent that organization in the community, and he probably does it as well as anybody has ever done it in Washington. That's just the kind of human being he is. I mean, it's true. And this is an old cliche, but if you have a daughter, you'd like her to marry a guy like Kirk Cousins. He is a great dude. that is disrespectful. If indeed Bruce Allen, and it sure seemed to me like in listening to the audio that he was calling him Kurt, if indeed that's what he said about him. Names are very, very precious. People don't like their names misspelled or mispronounced. And I know that because I've made the mistake too.
Oh, well, we have a name that's commonly misspelled on the back end unless you tell someone deliberately. It's Shepard, and people will typically go with a biblical spelling or something more phonetical like Shepp, and you don't take personal offense to that. However, if you work with somebody and they're spelling your name wrong, if you are coming into a job interview and they've prepared materials for your name wrong, if someone's giving you a presentation where you're supposed to be impressed with what they say and they can't get your name right, I'm writing that person off almost immediately because
Absolutely.
You haven't done the research or shown the attention to detail that you're invested in what this is doing. And if it's something that I'm serious about, I'm showing a level of investment that I feel is not reciprocated by you, and that makes me hesitant to do any kind of business with you. Maybe this guy is just, for lack of a better word, a dipshit. And I think it's funny to us. Externally, this has to be hilarious to the Washington media, which has probably been pulling its hair out because, as I said, this has been a problem for years. This has just reached kind of the national landscape. But Dan Steinberg of DC Sports Blog had a tweet that went semi-viral a couple days ago. Please enjoy Bruce Allen calling his franchise quarterback by the wrong first name 6 times in 2 minutes. And it's a little video, and it's just a little media scrum around him. And you have to imagine the conversations of those media members exiting that room, heads in hands, just shaking their head. And I don't get it. It's a small microcosm of a much bigger problem.
The PR people just go,
oh my God,
come on, are you kidding me? It just seems like there's a disconnect. Yeah. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and those poor PR people probably aren't properly empowered to connect the president of the organization or to correct the president of the organization repeatedly on that kind of thing.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's any one individual's fault besides this guy. That's what I mean. He's an adult. He needs to have some sort of responsibility. And if that doesn't matter, fine. If that's really not, if Kirk Cousins really doesn't care about it or we are making too much of it, that's great. But I promise you the next guy is going to care. Yeah. Okay? You're not going to find 2, 3, 4, 5 franchise quarterbacks in a row. Well, it doesn't matter if anyone gets their names right. I mean, grow up, man. Grow up and have some respect and understanding for the significance of the position that you hold.
What do you think about the olive branch extended from Rod Wood, the president of the Lions, who, by the way, when people found out that he was named president, people in this town ripped the Detroit Lions, and I think Rod Wood's done a really good job so far. And I mean that.
I'm extremely skeptical of business people who step into the sports world and try and treat that exactly the same way like a business. Rod Wood, I've been extremely impressed with, not only in the organizational decisions he's made, because he doesn't make them in this emotionless, cold, calculating dollars and cents way, but in his PR or in his public perception, his public the way he's been portrayed, so to speak. I thought he's done a fantastic job of being articulate, intelligent, giving useful answers. He doesn't give you the constant
not just that
smokescreen.
He also doesn't go where many people feel like he shouldn't go. In other words,
doesn't show his
player
face.
Evaluation and things like that.
Yes.
In other words, he's got his shit together, and I think that's pretty obvious with Rod Wood. And what he's done recently, he revealed during a radio interview on WJR earlier in the week that he and Calvin Johnson have exchanged texts, and he would like Calvin Johnson to come out to training camp because Calvin Johnson, like it or not, folks, Calvin Johnson's still seen as a face of this franchise. When you see Calvin Johnson, you think about the Detroit Lions. What I like about this, did I like that it got public and the Lions were asking him to pay back $1 million? No, I didn't like it. Okay? Does Calvin Johnson deserve it? I don't know. It's a good question. Good business people don't just give away $1 million. But on the other hand, teams that make as much money as teams in the NFL, and I know the Lions haven't always been necessarily profitable, but when they make as much money as they do you need to haggle, especially when it comes out in public, that you're the face of your franchise and one of the best players of his generation, you're nitpicking over quote-unquote $1 million.
That's fair, but we don't know exactly what these numbers are, so if listeners can kind of take taxes and other abstractions into consideration. But in the same personal sense, what is a personal fortune worth? The Lions organization might be worth whatever. Mm-hmm. Calvin Johnson was paid $113 million over his career. He can afford to pay that $1 million back, okay? Yeah. How much do you need as a single individual? And I'm not saying his bank account sits with 113 and then a number of zeros after it. Right. Obviously, it's a lot different than that. There's things that we can't really take into consideration accurately without knowing all the full details and what his tax returns look like. However, he's got more than enough money. And does it look public and petty? Yes, that's the bigger issue. The publicity with which the argument has gone, and now that they talk to each other through the media. So I'm indescribably encouraged by the fact that Rod Wood has had independent conversation, private conversations with Calvin Johnson, because I don't want to see Calvin Johnson at Raiders camp and at Niners camp and at Jaguars camp and not have anything to do with the Lions organization, because he's going to talk to media scrums there too.
Yeah.
Hey, Calvin, you got 5 minutes? What do you think? Some of the
the questions.
Well, first it's what are you up to now? Tell us about this endeavor that you got going on, and then how frustrating did it grow in Detroit where you just had to at some time that gets to you, and the further he gets from the Lions organization, the more liberated he might feel to talk smack about them, because I've been saying this for a year and a half and nobody even reached out to me. Give Rod Wood credit for heading this off early.
Right.
Give the Lions some front office organizational credit for trying to head this off early so it doesn't turn into a Washington situation down the line.
Why is the negative always being portrayed about, it's the $1 million? And it's interesting because in our last podcast we talked about Max Scherzer and the amount of money that he made, and fans thought, it's all about money, how much money is enough, but Calvin Johnson wants $1 million, or it's always the Lions who are at fault here. And I'm not sure that's necessarily fair either.
No, that's true. And if at this point, we're on social media here as we're recording. Obviously, there's some media going through the Ford Field renovations right now, where they had redone some suites and things like that. And at this rate, I'm getting ready for Rod Wood to make a Mayor of Detroit run. This is how many fans he's going to be making, because they literally are not going to put the Lions playoff banners back up in Ford Field. And his quote is, "Didn't see any point in putting them back up." And that's a really interesting thing, that it just shows, I think, that he gets the current state of mind of a lot of Lions fans. And one of the biggest issues, whether
I didn't have a problem with
but think about it. Whether it's in politics, whether it's in sports or economy or whatever you're talking about, one of the biggest issues today, especially when you have a nation as large as we do, is leaders speaking in a way that reflects that they're out of touch with either their constituents, their fan base, the modern public, whatever it might be. They are coming from a position where they have all this money and privilege and they get all these experiences, and then they come out and they say something that gets quoted in the media. People read it and say, "Are you effing kidding me? That's how you really feel? Why don't you come try and live a life in my days? Why don't you come or live a day in my shoes?" Something like that. Rod Wood is saying, hey, we get it. We get all the Lions fans who have been screaming from the balconies that we don't care about, it's been a painful 70 years or whatever it is. We don't care about, a division title here, there, whatever. He's saying, I understand your state of mind, and the way that that's unacceptable to you, it's equally unacceptable to me. And I think that's a cool thing that maybe people have not really shown the willingness to show or to actually learn about before.
I get it. All right. My question is, why is it okay for the Red Wings to hang their banners? Why is it okay for the Tigers to hang and celebrate 35, 45, 68? How late is late enough? Should we not acknowledge the Tigers' banners of 45 when they won a World Series or 35?
Look at where the Red Wings and Tigers have been since their last title. They've been back there repeatedly. The Lions haven't sniffed it. They haven't sniffed it.
So that means none of it had happened before? You shouldn't put it up no matter what?
I'm not saying it didn't happen, but when it's 70 years removed, I don't know. I think that's reflective of how fans feel.
I know it's how fans feel. But your organization still accomplished something. I know it's not what we want. I don't want it either, okay? I want a championship that is in the Super Bowl era. I totally get it. But don't you think would you feel slighted if you were part of the organization or part of those championship teams where they're not even acknowledged now? I mean, I don't have a problem with the banners being up. I find it I don't think it should be trumpeted per se, but there's nothing wrong with having them up there. Just because you haven't won recently shouldn't mean that the past doesn't exist, right? Am I wrong about that?
No, I get it. I understand, and I guess we'll have to hear what people say about that. And if you're right, it's not for me to say how players on those older teams should feel. I don't think they're trying to sweep those under the rug. I think they're just saying this isn't worth bragging about, at least right now. And look,
like I said, I don't know if they're bragging about it, Chad. I think they're just putting it up there because it happened. You're not going to run from it, are you? Look, the Red Wings, it was a long time before they finally won the Stanley Cup in 1997, right? They hadn't won the Stanley Cup in Detroit since 1955. Should we not put the 55 banner up? Should we not have put the 54 or the 52?
No,
or the 50
that's what I'm saying is we've forgotten where these teams have gone in between, and you don't have any Lions fans who are Lions fans because the Lions are good.
Right.
You have Tigers fans who were Tigers fans because of the '84 team
Yeah.
or because of the early 2000s team that made World Series.
Yeah.
You have Red Wings fans that became fans of the team's interim, in between those title runs or in between those dips and valleys. The Lions have not had that for a very, very long time, maybe ever. And this is saying we're acknowledging that our history is not appealing enough to you. We understand that to bring you in, it's what we do in the future, not what we've done in the past.
Yeah.
And I know that might be reading a little bit more into those banners than what you or I are really supposed to perceive them to be. But I am telling you, Lions fans are going to like this, right or wrong.
No question. And I think he just gained, as you said, he gained a lot more admirers.
Time for a mayoral bid for Ron Wood.
Shep Shower and Shave brought to you by Northwestern Tech. Individuals who are entering the HVAC field are seeing their pay potential go way up, and they're able to choose the companies that's going to help their career grow. Get that career started at Northwestern Tech. HVAC is all they teach. You can get trained, certified, and into the field in only 10 and a half months. Go to their website, northwesterntech.edu, or call them at 248-358-4006. We're also brought to you by Nate Noth Designs. You can find him on Instagram or on Facebook. And we're brought to you by Fifth Avenue. Fifth Avenue is the best place to watch the Tigers, Red Wings, Lions, Pistons, Wolverines, and Spartans with 40 HD TVs, a 14-foot HD projection screen, great food and drink specials, and a kitchen that's open until 2 a.m. daily. That's Fifth Avenue in Royal Oak with over 36 cold beers on tap.